Welcome to Storyflix Film, where movies are not just watched at a broken bar, they are experienced. Here, we bring you fast, powerful, and engaging movie recaps, turning full films into short, exciting stories without missing the thrill. From action-packed blockbusters to emotional dramas and mind-blowing sci-fi, we break it all down in a way that keeps you hooked till the end. So sit back, relax, and get ready, because every story here is a cinematic journey in minutes. American Madea is a 2017 Americana action comedy film directed by Doug Liman, written by Gary Spinelli and starring a Tom Cruise, a Domhnall Gleeson, a Sarah Wright, a Alejandro Etta, Mauricio Mejia, a Caleb Landry Jones, and a Jesse Plemons. 6A. It is inspired 7A by the life of Faberry Seal, a former TWIP pilot who became a drug smuggler for Thea Medel and Carla in the 1980s and then, to avoid jail time, became an informant for Thea D. The film was first released in Taiwan on August 18, 2017, and then in the United States on September 29, 2017. It is the first film directed by Liman to be released by Universal Pictures Agencia de Bornadinja in 2002 and played in 2D and IMAX in select theaters. It grossed $134 million worldwide and received generally positive reviews from critics, who praised Cruise's performance. Plot: in 1978, a Baton Rouge pilot Barry Seal, who flies commercial jets for TWA, is recruited by ACHO case officer Monty Schaefer. He asks Seal, who has been smuggling a Cuban cigarette into the country to make a little money, to fly reconnaissance missions over Central America using an Aerostar 600, outfitted with aerial surveillance cameras. Seal accepts the job, but hides it from his wife, Lucy. In the 1980s, Schaefer asks Seal to act as a courier between the CIA and General Noriega in Panama. During a mission, Thea Medel and Cartler picks Seal up and asks him to fly cocaine on his return flights to the U.S. Seal accepts and flies the cartel's cocaine to Louisiana, airdropping the drug in the countryside. The CIA turns a blind eye to the drug smuggling, but Thea D tracks Seal down. To avoid the authorities, Seal and his family relocate to Amina, Arkansas, and his wife comes to accept the wealth generated by his side job. The small town becomes wealthy as the hub of U.S. cocaine trafficking. Later, Schaefer asks Seal to run guns to Thea Nicaraguan Contras in Honduras. Realizing the Contras are not serious about the war and just want to get rich, Seal starts trading the guns to the cartel. The CIA sets up a Contra training base in Mina and Seal flies the Contras in, but many of them escape as soon as they arrive. Seal makes so much money he buries it in suitcases in the backyard. Seal's freeloading, unemployed brother-in-law JB moves in. JB starts stealing money and is arrested with a briefcase full of cash. With JB out on bail, Seal gives him money and a plane ticket to Bora Bora for his safety. JB demands weekly cash and insults Lucy. As Seal chases after him, JB is killed by a car bomb placed by the Medellin cartel, who had previously promised to take care of the JB problem. The FBI catches wind of the sudden exuberance on the streets of Mina, not helped by JB's reckless spending. Eventually, the CIA shuts down the program and abandons Seal, who is arrested by the FBI, and Arkansas State Police simultaneously. Seal escapes prosecution by making a deal with the White House, which wants evidence of Thea's and Anastasia being drug traffickers. They ask him to get photos that tie the Medellin cartel to the Nicaraguan Sandinistas. Seal manages to get them, but the White House releases them as propaganda against the Sandinistas. Seal is prominently shown in the pictures, which leads to his indictment by the crusading state attorney general and the cartel plotting revenge. Seal is convicted but sentenced to only 1,000 hours of community service. Moving from motel to motel, making the video recordings detailing his experiences, Seal expects an explosion at any time he starts his car. As his community service is performed at the Samia Salvation Army building every night, Seal cannot hide from the cartel and is shot dead by an assassin. The CIA destroys all evidence connecting them to Seal and continues smuggling, instead of using Iran to get guns to the Contras, as proposed by Schaefer. The film ends with Schaefer getting promoted for his idea, though it is soon discovered by the public, with reporters asking a President Reagan and a Vice President Bush about the scandal. Lucy and her kids move back to Baton Rouge, where she is seen contentedly working in fast food. One of her expensive pieces of jewelry is seen on her wrist. Cast: A Sense Tom Cruise as Barry Seal, A Sense Domhnall Gleeson as Monty Schaefer, A Sense Sarah Wright as Lucy Seal, A Sense Jesse Plemons as Sheriff Downing, A Sense Caleb Landry Jones as JB, A Sense Lola Kirkia as Judy Downing, A Sense Jamie Meza as Dana Sabota, I Sense Alejandro Eda Asa Horkeach Oa, A Sense Benito Martins as James Rangel, A Sense E. Roger Michela as Agent Craig McCall, A Sense Jed Riesa as Louis Finkel, A Sense Frank Licari as ATF Officer No. 1, I Sense Justice Lika as D Agents Winter, A Sense Freddie Yates as Carlos Leder, I Sense Mauricio Meja as Pablo Escobar, A Sense Connor Trinera as George W. Bush, A Sense Alberto Waspino as Manuel Antonio Noriega. Production development. In the summer of 2013, screenwriter Gary Spinelli was looking for a project that was based on real events. On the bonus feature Of American Made, A. Spinelli said, "I was looking for little hidden pieces of history, small stories that affected larger global events, and I came across the Mina story, and I always wanted to do a gangster film. A Goodfellas is one of my favorite movies, and I was always on the hunt to try to find my version of that. And once I started researching a CIA's involvement in Mina, the same name kept popping up, was César Barry Seal a character. As soon as I found Barry, I knew I had a movie." The film was originally titled Amina and in 2014 was featured in The Blacklist, a survey showcasing the best unproduced screenplays in Hollywood. On January 14, 2015, it was announced that a Tom Cruise and a Edge of Tomorrow director Doug Limano would reunite for what was originally titled Amina. Casting: Sarah Wright, A. Jamie Meza and a Domhnall Gleeson were added to the cast in April. A. Jesse Plemons, A. Caleb Landry Jones and a Lola Kirkia were added to the cast in May 2015. Robert Fourier played Lieutenant Colonel Oliver North. Filming principal photography on the film began on May 18, 2015, in Atlanta, Georgia. Filming locations there include County S. A Cherokee, A. Clayton, A. DeKalb, A. Fulton, A. Gwinnett, A. Morgana and A. Pickens. Filming on the Georgia unit wrapped on July 12, 2015. On August 20, 2015, crews arrived in Medellin, Colombia, and on August 31, in Santa Marta to scout filming locations for the film. Filming in Colombia commenced on August 26, 2015, and wrapped on September 11, 2015. Production on the film resumed February 3, 2016, in New Orleans, Louisiana, as filming has been suspended due to a plane crash in Colombia that occurred in September 2015. Reshoots were filmed in Atlanta in late January 2017. Plane crash: A plane crash on the set of the film in Colombia on September 11, 2015, killed 2 people and caused serious injuries to another member of the crew. The plane, a twin-engine Piper Aerostar, which was carrying crew members, 3 American pilots, was returning to Enrique Olaya Herrera Airport in Medellin when it ran into bad weather and the crash occurred. The dead were identified as Carlos Burrell and Alan Perwin, who was the founder and president of Liman Aviation, a company which provides aerial surveillance technology to government agencies and law enforcement, and a film pilot who had worked in top films. American pilot Jimmy Lee Garland was seriously injured and rushed to a local hospital. Release in May 2015. Universal set the film for release on January 6, 2017. On August 8, 2016, the film's release was pushed to September 29, 2017, and its title changed from Amina to American Made. It was released in Europe on August 23, 2017, and in the United States on September 29, 2017, and also screened at the Deauville Film Festival on September 1, 2017. Home media American Media was released in a digital on December 19, 2017, in the United States by Universal Pictures Home Entertainment, and on Ultra Blu-ray, a Blu-ray ended on December 26, 2017, in the United Kingdom and January 2, 2018 in the United States. Reception box office American Media grossed $51.3 million in the United States and Canada and $83.6 million in other territories, for a worldwide total of $134.9 million, against a production budget of $50 million. In North America, American Media was released alongside the openings of Flatliners and Till Death Do Us Part, as well as the wide expansion of Battle of the Sexes, and was projected to gross $15 million from 3,023 theaters in its opening weekend. It made $960,000 from Thursday night previews, the lowest total by a cruise-led film in recent years, and $6.1 million on its first day. Initially, studio estimates had the film opening to $17 million, finishing third at the box office, behind Holdovers Ida, $17.3 million, and A Kingsman, The Golden Circle, $17 million. The following day, actual results had the film debuting to $16.8 million, with A Kingsman beating out Ida by a gross of $16.93 million to $16.98 million. 91% of its opening weekend audience was over the age of 25. In its second weekend, the film grossed $8.1 million, a drop of 51%, finishing sixth. The film was released in 21 countries on August 25, 2017, and grossed a total of $6.1 million over the weekend. It finished number 1 in 11 of the territories, including the UK, where it replaced five-time Dunker critical response and now Rotten Tomatoes. The film has an approval rating of 85% based on 267 reviews. The site's critical consensus states, American-made's fast and loose attitude with its real-life story mirrors the cavalier and delightfully watchable energy Tom Cruise gives off in the leading role. And on Metacritic, the film has a weighted average score of 65 out of 100, based on reviews from 50 critics. Audiences polled by Cinemascoria gave the film an average grade of B+ on an A+2F scale. Willie Postricki reported filmgoers gave it a 55% definite recommend. Variety Skylodge wrote, a sweat-slicked, exhausting but glibly entertaining escapade on its own terms. American Media is more interesting as a showcase for the daedalus elasticity of Cruise's star power. It feels, for better or worse, like a film he could have made at almost any point in the last 30 years. Leslie Felperino, The Hollywood Reporter wrote, this is yet another hyper-competent, boyishly devil-may-care character that offers Cruise, famous for his daring do on set, a chance to do his own stunts and fly a plane. It's not a role all that far out of the aging megastar's wheelhouse. The operations are small, controlled, and experimental. He flies into unfamiliar territories, gathers intelligence, and returns with results. Each successful mission increases confidence not just in the operation, but in his own ability to manage risk. This is the RD phase of the narrative, where failure is still a possible but early wins begin to validate the model. What's fascinating here is the speed of feedback. Unlike traditional businesses where results take months or years, Barry's operations generate immediate outcomes. He flies, he delivers, he gets paid. This rapid cycle creates a powerful reinforcement loop. Success becomes addictive not because of the money alone but because of the efficiency. Every completed task proves that the system works and that he is exceptionally good at navigating it. As the scale begins to increase, the film introduces a new layer: stakeholder complexity. Barry is no longer dealing with a single client or a simply transaction. Instead, he becomes a bridge between multiple interests, government agencies, 4 ignite territories, and emerging criminal networks. Each stakeholder has its own objectives, its own risk tolerance, and its own expectations. Managing these relationships becomes as important as the flights themselves. This mirrors the real-world startup growth where early simplicity gives way to operational complexity. The pacing of the first half is deliberately engineered to feel smooth and almost effortless. This is what we can call narrative ROI. The return on emotional investment. The audience is not overwhelmed with tension early on. Instead, they are drawn into a rhythm of success. Flights go well, money comes in, and the operation expands. This creates a sense of momentum, which is essential for engagement. Just like in business, early wins are used to build confidence before introducing larger risks. At the same time, the film subtly plants the seeds of future instability. The more efficient Barry becomes, the more visible he becomes. This is a critical trade-off in any system: scalability versus exposure. As operations grow, so does the likelihood of detection. But in the early stages, this risk is easy to ignore because the rewards are immediate and tangible. The narrative captures this beautifully by keeping the tone light, almost playful even as the stakes quietly increase. Another important element introduced in this phase is infrastructure building. Barry begins to establish routes, contacts, and processes that allow him to operate more efficiently. These are not random actions, they are strategic investments in capacity. Each new connection, each new location adds to his operational network. This is how small ventures evolve into systems, not through a single leap, but through a series of incremental improvements. The emotional core of this section lies in the normalization of risk. What initially feels unusual quickly becomes routine. Flying into dangerous territories, handling sensitive cargo, navigating complex relationships. All of it starts to feel like just another day at work. This is a powerful psychological shift. When risk becomes routine, decision-making changes. Caution is replaced by confidence and sometimes by overconfidence. The film also uses humor and charm to mask the underlying attention. Barry's personality plays a crucial role here. His casual attitude makes the operation seem less threatening, more manageable. This is a strategic storytelling choice. By allowing the perceived danger, the film allows the audience to focus on the system rather than the fear. It becomes less about whether something will go wrong and more about how long the system can sustain itself. As the first half progresses, the operation begins to show signs of acceleration. More flights, more money, more connections. The growth is no longer linear, it is exponential. And with exponential growth comes a new kind of pressure. The need to maintain a momentum. This is where many ventures begin to lose control. Not because they fail, but because they succeed too quickly. By the end of this phase, we are left with a system that appears highly efficient, highly profitable, and increasingly complex. The groundwork has been laid. The prototype has been validated and the operation is ready to scale. But beneath this success lies an unspoken question. How sustainable is this model when every layer of growth introduces new variables, new risks, and new dependencies? As the narrative crosses into its second half, the system Barry has built begins to resemble a market already in motion rather than a startup finding its footing. The difference is subtle but critical. In the first half, he was experimenting with possibility. Now he is responsible for sustaining momentum. The flights are no longer isolated emissions. They are part of a continuous supply chain where delay, error or exposure in one link can ripple across the entire network. This is where the film transitions from growth to management. From excitement to pressure. The scale of operations expands dramatically and with it comes a shift in the nature of risk. Earlier risk was episodic tied to individual flights. Now it becomes systemic. Every route, every contact, every transaction is interconnected. The more efficient Barry becomes, the more dependent the system becomes on him. This creates what in a business would be called a single point of failure. The entire enterprise, no matter how vast, hinges on only an individual maintaining perfect execution. Financially, the story enters a phase of overwhelming liquidity. Money begins to flow in faster than it can be managed, stored, or even counted. This is not just wealth, it is unstructured capital arriving without governance, without accounting systems, without regulatory frameworks. The film visually and narratively emphasizes the success, A showing how abundance itself can become a liability. When capital outpaces a control, it stops being an asset and starts becoming a source of instability. What's particularly compelling is how the film treats this explosion of wealth as both a reward and a warning. Barry's lifestyle improves, his confidence grows, and his operations expand further. But beneath that success lies a growing imbalance. The system is scaling faster than its infrastructure can support. This is the classic challenge of Roth, where success creates problems that did not exist at smaller scales. Storage, secrecy, trust and logistics all become increasingly fragile. At the same time, stakeholder dynamics intensify. The relationships that once felt transactional now become strategic and sometimes adversarial. Different parties begin to exert pressure, each with their own expectations and timelines. These introduces a new layer of complex negotiation where Barry must constantly balance competing interests. In economic terms, he is operating in a multi-sided market where value creation depends on satisfying multiple stakeholders simultaneously, a task that becomes exponentially harder as scale increases. The narrative also begins to explore the concept of diminishing control. Early in the story, Barry is in full command of his operations. He makes decisions quickly, adapts easily, and maintains a clear understanding of his environment. But as the system grows, control starts to fragment. Delegation becomes necessary. And with delegation comes uncertainty. Not every variable can be monitored. Not every outcome can be predicted. The system begins to develop a life of its own. This loss of control is mirrored in the pacing of the film. The smooth, almost rhythmic progression of the first half gives way to a more fragmented and unpredictable flow. Events start to overlap, consequences arrive faster, and the margin for error shrinks. This is what we can describe as narrative volatility, a shift that reflects the increasing instability of the system itself. The audience begins to feel the pressure, even if the protagonist continues to project confidence. Another critical element in this phase is regulatory exposure. As operations scale, they inevitably attract attention. Systems that operate in the shadows can remain invisible only up to a certain threshold. Beyond that, visibility becomes unavoidable. The film captures this transition with subtle tension, showing how increased activity leads to increased scrutiny. It is not a single mistake that creates risk, but the accumulation of success itself. Psychologically, Barry undergoes a transformation that is both fascinating and dangerous. The constant cycle of risk and reward begins to reshape his perception of normally high-stakes situations no longer feel exceptional, they become routine. This is a form of risk desensitization where repeated exposure reduces fear and increases a tolerance for danger. In many high-performance environments, this can be an advantage. But in unstable systems, it can lead to overextension. The emotional stakes of the story deepen as the personal and professional worlds begin to intersect. What was once a contained operation now spills into everyday life. The boundaries between work and identity blur and the consequences of decisions become more immediate and more personal. This is where the film subtly shifts from being a story about operations to a story about consequences. The concept of product market fit becomes an interesting lens here. In the first half, Barry is proving that his product, his ability to move goods efficiently has demand. In the second half, that demand becomes overwhelming. The market fully accepts the product, but in doing so, it pushes the system to its limits. This is the paradox of success. Achieving perfect fit can sometimes create unsustainable pressure. As the narrative approaches its climax, the system begins to show clear signs of strain. The balance between opportunity and exposure starts to tilt. What Ansia felt like a controlled operation now feels like a high-speed structure moving toward an inevitable collision. The audience can sense that the same factors that drove success, speed, efficiency, and risk tolerance are now amplifying a vulnerability. By the end of this phase, the film has effectively transformed the central question. It is no longer asking how far the system can grow, but how long it can survive. The focus shifts from expansion to sustainability, from accumulation to consequence. And in that shift, the story reveals its deeper insight that every system, no matter how profitable, carries within it the seeds of its own limits. As the narrative via shifts from external systems to internal motivations, the film opens a deeper layer that is less visible but far more powerful. The architecture of the human mind under pressure. Barry is no longer just an operator within a system. He becomes a case study in behavioral economics where every decision reflects a balance between reward, risk, and a psychological bias. What appears on the surface as confidence is in many ways a carefully constructed adaptation to an environment that rewards speed over reflection. At the center of Barry's psychology is a powerful driver, the desire for control through competence. He is not reckless in the traditional sense. In fact, his actions are highly calculated, but the calculation itself becomes his vulnerability. This is a classic example of overconfidence bias where repeated success reinforces the belief that one can manage increasingly complex risks. Each successful operation acts as data that supports his internal model even when the model is becoming less accurate in a changing environment. The film also explores the concept of incentive structures. Barry is placed in a system where the rewards for success are immediate, tangible, and significant while the costs of failure are delayed and uncertain. This imbalance creates a powerful motivation loop. From a behavioral standpoint, humans are naturally inclined to prioritize immediate gains over distant risks. The film uses this principle to explain why Barry continues to escalate his involvement even as the stakes become dangerously high. Another key psychological layer is moral flexibility. Barry does not begin his journey with a fixed ethical framework. Instead, his morality evolves in a response to his environment. Decisions that might initially seem questionably are gradually normalized through a repetition and justification. This is known as moral adaptation, where individuals adjust their ethical boundaries to align with their circumstances. The film presents this not as a dramatic shift but as a gradual, almost invisibly process. Leadership pressure also plays a significant role in shaping his behavior. As the operation grows, Barry is no longer just responsible for himself. He becomes accountable for a network of people, processes, and expectations. This introduces the concept of responsibility escalation. The more people depend on him, the harder it becomes to slow down or step back. In economic terms, this is similar to a CEO managing a rapidly growing company where decisions must be made quickly, often with incomplete information, and where hesitation can be more costly than action. The film subtly highlights the role of risk perception. Barry's ability to navigate dangerous situations creates a sense of mastery, which in turn reduces his perception of fair risk. This is not because the risks are decreasing but because his familiarity with them increases. This phenomenon, often referred to as the normalization of events, shows how repeated exposure to high-risk scenarios can make the aim feel routine. Over time, what was once considered dangerous becomes standard operating procedure. There is also an element of identity transformation at play. Barry begins as a pilot, a professional defined by skill and discipline. But as the story progresses, his identity becomes intertwined with the system he operates. He is no longer just doing the job, he becomes the job. This fusion of identity and role makes it increasingly difficult to separate personal values from professional actions. The system is no longer external. It becomes part of who he is. The concept of opportunity cost is another critical lens through which we can understand his decisions. At multiple points in the narrative, Barry has the option to step away, to stabilize, to reduce risk. But each of these options comes with a cost, the loss of income, influence, and momentum. In high-growth environments, stepping back can feel like moving backward. This creates a psychological barrier to exit where the cost of leaving appears greater than the risk of staying. The film also examines the role of uncertainty management. Barry operates in an environment where information is incomplete, outcomes are unpredictable, and variables are constantly shifting. His ability to function under these conditions is both a strength and a source of stress. He develops a form of cognitive resilience, allowing him to make decisions quickly and adapt to changing circumstances. But this resilience comes at a cost. The gradual erosion of caution. Emotional detachment becomes another coping mechanism. To sustain his operations, Barry must distance himself from the broader implications of his actions. This is not presented as indifference, but as a necessary adaptation. In a high-stakes environments, emotional engagement can slow decision-making. By reducing emotional friction, he increases efficiency. But this detachment also reduces the national checks that might otherwise limit a risk-taking behavior. The interplay between personal ambition and systemic pressure creates a dynamic tension that drives the narrative forward. Barry is not simply reacting to external forces, he is actively shaping his environment through his decisions. This dual role, also both participant and architect, makes his journey particularly complex. He is building a system while simultaneously being shaped by it. As the psychological analysis deepens, the film reveals a fundamental insight that human behavior in high-risk, high-reward environments is rarely driven by a single factor. It is the result of multiple forces, incentives, biases, pressures, and adaptations interacting in complex ways. Understanding Barry's actions requires us to look beyond surface-level judgments and examine the underlying mechanisms that guide decision-making. By the end of this step, the story becomes less about what Barry does and more about why he does it. The focus shifts from events to motivations, from actions to thought processes. And in doing so, the film transforms into a study of human behavior under extreme conditions. A reminder that in systems driven by speed and reward, psychology is often the most critical variable of all. As we move into the financial core of the film, the story begins to resemble a full-scale business case study where every scene can be interpreted as a line item in a complex profit and loss statement. American media is not just a narrative about events. It is a living model of how capital flows through informal systems, how margins are created, and how risk is priced when a regulation is intentionally bypassed. The production itself mirrors this philosophy, operating on a budget of around $50 million approximate. Yet generating a global box office return of approximately $135 million approximate, signaling a calculated and efficient return on investment. From a studio perspective, this film represents a mid-budget strategy, a space that has become increasingly rare in modern Hollywood. It avoids the excessive risk of blockbuster-scale budgets while still delivering a compelling high-concept narrative. This positioning is critical because it allows for greater flexibility in storytelling while maintaining financial discipline. In many ways, the film itself behaves like its protagonist, agile, efficient, and focused on maximizing output relative to input. When we examine the internal economy of the story, Barry's operation functions as a high-margin enterprise. The core asset is not physical inventory, but logistical capability, the ability to move goods quickly and discreetly. This drastically reduces the traditional overhead costs associated with manufacturing or storage. Instead, the primary expenses are operational, fuel, aircraft maintenance, and the cost of maintaining relationships. The margins therefore are driven by efficiency and scale rather than volume alone. One of the most striking elements is the concept of cash flow velocity. Money enters the system at an extraordinary pace, often faster than it can be managed. This creates a paradox where profitability becomes difficult to quantify because the inflow is so rapid and so loosely structured. In a traditional finance, systems are designed to track, allocate, and reinvest capital. Here, those systems are absent, leading to a form of uncontrolled liquidity that is both empowering and destabilizing. The film also subtly highlights the importance of distribution channels. Barry's ability to operate depends entirely on his access to routes and networks that allow goods to move without interruption. These channels are his competitive advantage. In business terms, this is equivalent to owning a highly efficient supply chain, one that competitors cannot easily replicate. The value of his operation is not just in what he does, but in how seamlessly he can do it. Marketing in the traditional sense is almost invisible within the story, yet it exists in a different form. Instead of advertisements or campaigns, the marketing is relational, built on trust, reputation, and performance. Each successful delivery strengthens his brand within the network, attracting a more opportunities and higher value transactions. This is a form of organic growth where demand is generated through a demonstrated capability rather than an external promotion. From a broader industry perspective, the film's release strategy reflects a careful balance between theatrical performance and a long-term value. While the box office provides immediate revenue, the film's true financial strength lies in its aftermarket potential, streaming rights, digital rentals, and global distribution. These secondary revenue streams often operate on higher margins as the initial production costs have already been absorbed. The concept of break-even becomes particularly interesting here. For a film with a $50 million budget, the break-even point typically requires roughly 2 to 2.5 times the production cost when marketing and distribution are included. These places the threshold somewhere around $100 to $125 million approximate. With a global gross of around $135 million approximate, the film crosses these threshold entering profitability territory. This is not explosive success, but it is sustainable success, at the kind that studios value for its reliability. Another layer of financial insight comes from the way the film portrays risk diversification. Barry's operations are not limited to a single type of transaction. By engaging with multiple stakeholders and activities, he spreads risk across different channels. However, this diversification is not without its challenges. Each additional stream introduces new variables, new dependencies, and new points of failure. The film captures this tension between a diversification and complexity with a remarkable clarity. The role of regulatory arbitrage is central to both the narrative and its financial logic. Barry's entire business model depends on operating in spaces where regulation is either weak, inconsistent, or intentionally ignored. This allows for higher margins, but it also introduces a significant risk. In economic terms, he is exploiting inefficiencies in the system, gaps where oversight is limited and opportunities are abundant. The film also invites us to consider the concept of scaling costs. In many businesses, scaling leads to economies of scale where costs per unit decrease as volume increases. In Barry's case, scaling introduces new costs, security, coordination, risk management that do not decrease proportionally. These creates a unique financial dynamic where growth does not necessarily lead to increased efficiency, but rather to increased complexity. From a monetization perspective, the story itself becomes a product designed to appeal to a specific audience segment, one that values intelligent entertainment. By blending elements of crime, history, and economics, the film positions itself within a higher category, attracting advertisers and viewers interested in finance, technology, and real-world systems. This alignment enhances its long-term revenue potential beyond the initial box office performance. Ultimately, this stable reveals that both the film and its narrative operate on the same underlying principle: the pursuit of profit within a system of calculated risk. Whether we are analyzing the studio's investment or Barry's operations, the patterns remain consistent: identify opportunity, optimize execution, manage exposure, and aim for sustainable returns. It is a reminder that behind every story of action and intrigue lies a deeper structure of numbers, decisions, and economic logic. As we move deeper into the technical fabric of the film, American-made reveals itself not through a spectacle, but through the quiet precision of filmmaking engineering. This is not a movie that relies on overwhelming CGI or visual excess. Instead, it builds its authenticity through controlled technological choices where every camera movement, lens selection, and editing decision serves a psychological and logistical purpose. The technology here is not meant to impress, it is meant to disappear into a realism. The cinematographic backbone of the film is rooted in the use of digital systems, particularly variations of the Real-X platform, known for its dynamic range and color science. This choice is critical because it allows the film to capture both the bright open skies of aviation and the grounded, often shadowy interiors with an equal clarity. The sensor's ability to retain detail in highlights and shadows ensures that the visual narrative remains consistent even as environments shift dramatically. Lens selection plays a subtle but powerful role in shaping the audience's perception. The film frequently employs mid-range focal lengths that mimic human vision, creating a sense of immediacy and immersion. This is not accidental. By avoiding overly stylized wide-angle distortion or compressed telephoto perspectives, the film maintains a documentary-like authenticity. The viewer feels as though they are present within the environment rather than observing it from a distance. One of the most interesting technological aspects is the integration of practical aviation footage. Instead of relying heavily on digital simulations, the production invests in real aircraft and real flight sequences. This decision has both artistic and financial implications. While practical shooting can increase logistical complexity and upfront costs, it often reduces post-production expenses and enhances realism. The result is a tactile sense of movement that is difficult to replicate digitally. Editing workflows further reinforce this grounded approach. The film likely utilizes industry-standard systems such as Avid Media Composer for editing and DaVinci Resolve for color grading. These tools allow for precise control over pacing, tone, and visual consistency. The editing style is intentionally fluid, avoiding abrupt cuts or overly stylized transitions. This creates a seamless narrative flow where the audience moves through the story without being distracted by the mechanics of filmmaking. Color grading is another area where technology meets psychology. The film adopts a slightly warm sunlit palette that reflects the geographical settings while also conveying a sense of openness and opportunity. At the same time, subtle desaturation and contrast adjustments are used to ground the visuals in realism. This balance between warmth and restraint mirrors the dual nature of the story, inviting on the surface but the complex beneath. Sound technology, while often discussed separately, is deeply integrated into the filmmaking process. On-set audio capture combined with post-production mixing and tools like Avid Pro Tools ensures that environmental sounds, engines, wind, ambient noise are not just heard but felt. These elements contribute to a multisensory experience that enhances immersion without drawing attention to itself. The film also demonstrates an efficient use of visual effects, but in a restrained manner. Instead of large-scale CGI sequences, visual effects are used to enhance and support practical footage. This includes subtle compositing, environmental adjustments, and safety enhancements. By keeping VFX invisible, the film maintains its commitment to realism while still benefiting from modern technological capabilities. Workflow efficiency is a key theme in this production. The integration of digital cameras, nonlinear editing systems, and a streamlined post-production pipeline allows the film to move quickly from shooting to final output. This efficiency is not just a technical advantage, it is a financial one. Reduce turnaround times, lower costs, and allow for more flexibility in meeting release schedules. Another important aspect is the use of handheld camera techniques. These choices introduce a slight instability in the frame which subconsciously communicates tension and immediacy. The viewer feels closer to the action, more connected to the environment. This is a deliberate psychological effect achieved through a combination of camera operation and stabilization technology. The film's technological philosophy can be summarized as invisible innovation. Instead of showcasing technology for its own sake, it uses it to support the narrative in a way that feels national and unforced. This approach aligns with the overall tone of the film, which prioritizes authenticity over spectacle. From a broader industry perspective, this film represents a shift toward efficiency-driven production. By leveraging reliable, high-quality digital tools and focusing on practical execution, it achieves a level of polish that rivals more expensive productions. This is particularly important in a market where budgets must be carefully managed to ensure profitability. Ultimately, this step reveals that technology in film is not just about what is used, but how it is used. The choices made in American-made reflect a deep understanding of both the tools and the story they are meant to serve. It is a reminder that the most effective technology is often the kind that goes unnoticed, quietly enabling the narrative to unfold with clarity, precision, and emotional impact. As the film transitions into the mechanics of production management, what emerges is not just a story being told, but a project being executed under tighter constraints of time, cost, and coordination. American-made operates like a mid-scale corporate venture where every shooting day is a unit of capital expenditure and every delay translates directly into financial loss. This is where cinema reveals its industrial backbone, not as art alone, but as a complex operational machine. At the heart of this machine is scheduling, only of the most critical variables in film production economics. With a budget of approximately $50 million, the margin for inefficiency is limited. Every location, every actor's availability, every aircraft sequence must be meticulously planned. Unlike digitally heavy productions that can rely on post-production flexibility, these films' reliance on practical aviation sequences demands real-time precision. Weather conditions, daylight windows, and airspace permissions all become variables that must be accounted for in advance. The hierarchy on set mirrors that of a well-structured organization. At the top sits the director, functioning as both creative leader and strategic decision maker. Beneath this role, producers manage budget allocation, risk mitigation, and stakeholder communication. Department heads, cinematography, sound, production and design, operate like specialized divisions, each responsible for delivering their segment of the product within defined parameters. This layered structure ensures that complexity is distributed, not centralized. One of the most interesting aspects of this production is its reliance on logistical coordination. Filming with aircraft is not simply a creative choice. It is a logistical challenge that requires a coordination with aviation authorities, safety teams, and technical crews. Each flight sequence involves multiple layers of approval and preparation, from securing locations to ensuring a compliance with safety regulations. These transforms what might seem like a simple scene into a multi-step operational process. Time in this context becomes synonymous with capital. Every additional day of shooting increases costs, crew wages, equipment rentals, location fees. This creates a constant pressure to maintain efficiency without compromising quality. The film's relatively controlled visual style is in part a response to this constraint. By avoiding overly complex setups, the production can maintain a steady pace, reducing the risk of delays. Workforce allocation is another key element. A film set is a temporary ecosystem of highly specialized professionals, each contributing to a specific aspect of the production. Managing this workforce requires not only technical expertise, but also interpersonal skill. Communication must be clear, decisions must be timely, and conflicts must be resolved and effectively. In many ways, this mirrors the challenges faced by managers in large organizations. The concept of risk management is deeply embedded in the production process. From safety protocols during flight sequences to contingency plans for weather disruptions, the production must anticipate potential issues and prepare solutions in advance. This proactive approach reduces the likelihood of costly interruptions and ensures that the project remains on track. Budget control is maintained through a combination of planning and monitoring. Producers track expenditures in real time, adjusting allocations as needed to stay within financial limits. These requires a delicate balance between cost efficiency and creative ambition. Cutting corners can compromise the final product, while overspending can jeopardize profitability. The film's success suggests that this balance was managed effectively. Another layer of complexity comes from location management. Shooting across different environments introduces variables related to transportation, accommodation, and local regulations. Each location must be evaluated not only for its visual suitability but also for its logistical feasibility. This dual consideration ensures that creative goals align with operational realities. The production also benefits from a streamlined decision-making process. In high-pressure environments, delays in a decision can cascade into larger issues. By maintaining a clear chain of command and empowering department heads, The production can respond quickly to changing conditions. This agility is essential in maintaining momentum. The integration of technology further enhances operational efficiency. Digital workflows allow for immediate review of footage, enabling quick adjustments and reducing the need for reshoots. Communication tools facilitate coordination between departments, ensuring that everyone remains aligned with the project's objectives. From a studio perspective, this production exemplifies the principles of corporate project management. It operates within defined constraints, leverages a specialized expertise, and prioritizes efficiency and risk mitigation. The film becomes not just a creative endeavor but a managed investment where success is measured in both artistic and financial terms. Ultimately, this step highlights the invisible labor that underpins every frame of the film. Behind the narrative via flights and transactions lies a parallel story of planning, coordination, and execution. It is a reminder that cinema at its core is a collaborative enterprise, one that transforms vision into reality through a disciplined management and strategic allocation of resources. As the film transitions into the domain of historical and scientific grounding, it begins to reveal itself not just as a dramatized narrative, but as an interpretation of real-world systems that once operated at the intersection of geopolitics, aviation, and informal economies. American-made draws inspiration from the life of Barry Seal, a figure whose activities were deeply embedded within the broader context of Cold War-era intelligence operations and transnational trade networks. This grounding gives the film a layer of educational value, inviting us to examine how closely its portrayal aligns with documented reality. From a historical standpoint, the film captures the essence of a period where global power structures were often managed through indirect means. Governments, intelligence agencies, and non-state actors frequently operated in overlapping spheres, creating environments where legality was fluid and objectives were pursued through unconventional channels. The film reflects this ambiguity, presenting a world where official narratives and operational realities do not always align. This tension between appearance and function is a hallmark of the era it depicts. The aviation component of the story is rooted in real technological capabilities. The use of small aircraft for rapid low-altitude transport is not fictional. It reflects practical strategies employed in regions with a limited infrastructure and high operational risk. These aircraft, often modified for increased range or payload capacity, became essential tools in both legitimate and illicit operations. The film's depiction of these modifications, while simplified for narrative clarity, aligns with known practices in aviation engineering. Scientifically, the film engages with the principles of flight dynamics and navigation. The challenges of flying in unpredictable weather, landing on improvised airstrips, and maintaining control under varying load conditions are grounded in real physics. While the film does not delve into technical explanations, its portrayal of these challenges is consistent with the realities faced by pilots operating in similar environments. This adds a layer of authenticity that enhances the viewer's trust in the narrative. The representation of communication systems also reflects historical accuracy. During the period depicted, communication technologies were less advanced and more vulnerable to interception. This created both limitations and opportunities. Operators had to rely on a combination of radio communication, coded messages, and physical coordination. The film captures this environment of constrained communication where information flow is both critical and uncertain. However, like any dramatized work, the film takes certain creative liberties. Timelines are compressed, events are simplified, and characters are sometimes amalgamated to serve the narrative. These choices are not necessarily inaccuracies, but rather adaptations designed to maintain a pacing and clarity. The challenge lies in balancing factual integrity with storytelling efficiency, and the film navigates this balance with a reasonable degree of care. The economic systems depicted in the film also have a historical grounding. Informal economies, particularly those operating across borders, often function outside the traditional regulatory frameworks. These systems rely on trust, reputation, and enforcement mechanisms that differ from formal institutions. The film's portrayal of these dynamics, where relationships and performance determine access and opportunity, aligns with the documented patterns in such environments. Another important aspect is the role of geography. The film's settings are not arbitrary. They reflect regions that have historically been significant in global trade and intelligence operations. Terrain, infrastructure, and political conditions all influence how operations are conducted. By situating its narrative within these environments, the film adds a layer of contextual realism that supports its broader themes. The involvement of institutional actors introduces a layer of complexity that is both historical and analytical. The film suggests that large organizations sometimes operate through intermediaries to achieve their objectives. This approach allows for plausible deniability while still pursuing its strategic goals. While the specifics may be dramatized, the underlying concept is consistent with known practices in international relations. From a scientific perspective, the film also touches on the limitations of human performance. Pilots operating under stress must manage cognitive load, fatigue, and environmental variables simultaneously. The ability to maintain focus and make decisions under these conditions is a critical factor in operational success. The film portrays this challenge through its depiction of high-pressure scenarios where quick thinking and adaptability are essential. The narrative's treatment of risk is also grounded in real-world principles. Risk is not eliminated, it is managed. Operators assess probabilities, weigh potential outcomes, and make decisions based on incomplete information. This probabilistic approach to decision making is a key aspect of both aviation and economic behavior, and the film integrates it seamlessly into its storytelling. While the film does not aim to be a documentary, it achieves a level of plausibility that enhances its credibility by aligning its narrative with known historical and scientific principles. It creates a foundation that supports both the dramatic and analytical elements. This alignment is particularly valuable for viewers seeking not just entertainment, but insight into the systems being portrayed. Ultimately, this step reveals that the film operates at the intersection of fact and fiction, where historical context and scientific reality provide a framework for storytelling. It reminds us that behind every dramatized narrative lies a deeper layer of truth, one that can be explored, analyzed, and understood through the lens of education and inquiry. As we enter the visual architecture of the film, the story begins to express itself not through a dialogue or action alone, but through the language of light, lenses, and a composition. American-made approaches cinematography as a form of visual engineering where every frame is designed to translate abstract ideas, risk, speed, and stability into something immeasurable and perceptible. The camera does not simply record events, it interprets them, shaping how we emotionally and cognitively engage with the narrative. One of the defining characteristics of the film's visual style is its commitment to naturalistic lighting. Instead of heavily stylized setups, the film relies on light that feels organic to the environment. Sunlight filtering through aircraft windows, ambient illumination in interiors, and practical sources like lamps and street lights. This approach enhances realism while also reducing the need for complex lighting rigs, contributing to both aesthetic coherency and production efficiency. The use of a dynamic range is particularly important in this context. Modern digital sensors, especially those in the ecosystem, allow for the capture of a wide spectrum of light and shadow. This capability ensures that details are preserved even in high contrast scenarios such as bright skies against darker interiors. The result is a visual continuity that supports the film's grounded tone, allowing transitions between environments to feel seamless rather than abrupt. Composition plays a critical role in conveying the film's themes. Frames are often structured to emphasize movement and direction, horizontal lines that suggest travel, open spaces that imply freedom, and enclosed environments that signal a constraint. This geometric approach to composition creates a visual rhythm that mirrors the narrative's progression from control to complexity. The viewer is subtly guided through the story, noted just by events, but by spatial relationships within the frame. Camera movement is another key element of Thea's visual strategy. The film frequently employs handheld and lightly stabilized shots, introducing a sense of immediacy and unpredictability. This technique aligns with the protagonist's experience where conditions are constantly shifting and stability is never guaranteed. Thea's slight imperfections in movement make the visuals feel more human, more connected to the reality being portrayed. Lens physics also contribute to the film's emotional impact. By selecting lenses that closely approximate human vision, the filmmakers create a sense of intimacy and immersion. Depth of field is used strategically, sometimes shallow to isolate the subject, other times deeper to maintain environmental context. Thea's manipulation of focus directs attention while preserving the authenticity of the scene. Color science is another layer of visual engineering that deserves attention. The film's palette leans toward warm, earthy tones, reflecting both the geographical settings and the emotional undercurrents of the story. These colors evoke a sense of familiarity and accessibility. Even as the narrative explores increasingly complex systems, subtle shifts in color or temperature and saturation are used to signal changes in mood and context, creating a visual narrative that complements the storyline. The integration of environmental elements further enhances the film's realism. Dust, haze, and atmospheric conditions are not just background details. They are active components of the visual design. These elements interact with the light, creating texture and depth that enrich the image. This approach demonstrates an understanding of how physical environments influence visual perception. Framing decisions often reflect the psychological state of the protagonist. Wide shots convey openness and opportunity, while tighter frames introduce a sense of pressure and confinement. This dynamic use of space allows the film to communicate internal states without relying solely on dialogue. The viewer can feel the shift from expansion to constraint through visual cues alone. The film also makes an effective use of continuity in its visual design. Despite the variety of locations and scenarios, there is a consistent aesthetic that ties everything together. This consistency is achieved through careful control of lighting, color, and composition, ensuring that the film maintains a cohesive visual identity. Another important aspect is the balance between foreground and background elements. By carefully layering visual information, the film creates depth and complexity within each frame. This layering allows the viewer to engage with multiple aspects of the scene simultaneously, enhancing both realism and narrative richness. From a technical perspective, the film demonstrates an efficient use of available tools to achieve its visual goals. Rather than relying on expensive or experimental techniques, it leverages proven technologies and methods, applying them with precision and intent. This reflects a broader philosophy of optimization, achieving maximum impact with controlled resources. Ultimately, this step reveals that cinematography in American-made is not just about capturing images, but about engineering experience. It translates the film's themes into visual form, creating a bridge between abstract concepts and a sensory perception through light, lenses, and composition. The film invites us to not just watch the story, but to feel the structure of the system it portrays. As the film transitions into its sonic dimension, we begin to understand that sound is not simply an accompaniment to the image, but a parallel system of engineering, one that shapes perception, guides emotion, and reinforces the film's underlying themes of speed, risk, and momentum. In American-made, sound design operates with a subtle precision, rarely announcing itself, yet constantly influencing how we experience every frame. At the core of this system is the concept of layered audio architecture. Every scene is constructed from multiple sonic elements, dialogue, ambient noise, mechanical sounds, and music, each occupying its own frequency range and spatial position. This layering allows the film to create depth without overwhelming the listener. The audience is not consciously aware of each layer, but they feel the cumulative effect as a cohesive auditory environment. The sound of aviation is perhaps the most defining element of the film's audio design. Engines, propellers, wind resistance. These are not treated as background noise, but as primary sonic textures. The tonal qualities of these sounds are carefully balanced to convey both power and vulnerability. A steady engineer humiguation and pitch or intensity signal instability. This use of mechanical sound as emotional language is a key innovation in the film's design. Dynamic range management plays a crucial role in maintaining clarity and impact. The film avoids constant high-intensity audio, instead allowing for moments of quiet that make louder sequences more effective. This contrast creates a rhythm that mirrors the narrative's pacing, periods of calm followed by a burst of activity. In technical terms, this is an optimization of signal-to-noise ratio, ensuring that important sounds are always distinguishable. Dialogue is handled with a naturalistic approach, often integrated seamlessly into the environment. Rather than isolating voices with overly clean audio, the film allows ambient sounds to coexist with speech. This choice enhances realism, making conversations feel grounded within their settings. At the same time, careful mixing ensures that dialogue remains intelligible, balancing authenticity with accessibility. The role of spatial audio is particularly interesting. Through techniques such as panning and reverb, the film creates a sense of a three-dimensional space. Sounds move across the auditory field, reflecting the physical movement of objects and characters. This spatialization enhances immersion, allowing the audience to feel as though they are inside the environment rather than observing it from a distance. Music, while present, is used with restraint. Instead of dominating the soundscape, the score functions as a subtle emotional guide. It often blends with ambient sounds, creating a seamless transition between a diegetic and non-diegetic audio. This integration ensures that the music supports the narrative without overshadowing it. The film's use of silence is equally significant. Moments where sound is reduced or absent create a psychological pause, allowing the audience to process what is happening. These gaps in the audio landscape are not empty. They are intentional spaces that hide tension and focus attention. In many ways, silence becomes as important as sound itself. From a production standpoint, the film likely utilizes industry-standard tools such as Avid Pro Tools for mixing and mastering. These systems allow for precise control over every element of the audio from volume levels to frequency distribution. The result is a polished soundscape that maintains consistency across different viewing environments from theaters to home systems. Foley work, the recreation of everyday sounds adds another layer of detail. Footsteps, a fabric movement, object handling. These subtle sounds contribute to the tactile quality of the film. They ground the visuals in reality, making the world feel more tangible and immediate. The integration of environmental audio further enhances this realism. Background sounds such as wind, distant traffic, and ambient chatter are carefully curated to match each location. These elements provide context, helping the audience understand where they are without the need for explicit explanation. The film also demonstrates an awareness of auditory focus. By selectively emphasizing certain sounds over others, it guides the viewer's attention. This is similar to visual focus in cinematography but applied to the auditory domain. The result is a more controlled and intentional viewing experience. Ultimately, the sound design of American Made exemplifies the principle that audio is not secondary to visuals but equally essential in shaping the narrative. It operates as an invisible framework supporting and enhancing every aspect of the film through careful layering, dynamic control, and spatial design. The film creates a soundscape that is both immersive and informative, a true investment in the audience as a sensory experience. As the film moves into the domain of marketing strategy and audience analytics, we begin to see that American Made is not only a product of fast storytelling and production, but also of calculated distribution, a carefully engineered effort to position the film within the right audience segments at the right time with the right messaging. Marketing here is not decoration. It is an extension of the film's economical logic designed to maximize visibility, engagement, and ultimately revenue. The first layer of this strategy lies in trailer engineering. Trailers are not simple previews, they are data-driven assets crafted to test audience reactions and optimize conversion rates. Key scenes are selected not just for their visual appeal, but for their ability to communicate tone, stakes, and a uniqueness within a short time frame. For a film like this, the emphasis is on blending humor, tension, and real-world intrigue, creating a value proposition that appeals to both entertainment seekers and intellectually curious viewers. Audience targeting plays a critical role in determining how the film is positioned. American-made sits at the intersection of multiply high-value demographics, fans of action and crime narratives, viewers interested in real-life stories, and audiences drawn to themes of finance, intelligence, and global systems. These multi-segment appeal allows for a broad yet focused targeting strategy where marketing messages can be tailored to highlight different aspects of the film depending on the platform and audience. Digital marketing channels are central to this approach. Social media platforms enable the studio to run AB tests and promotional adjusting thumbnails, taglines, and video snippets to identify what resonates most with viewers. Metrics such as click-through rate, CTR, engagement rate, and watch time provide immediate feedback, allowing for rapid optimization. This iterative process mirrors the data-driven strategies used in modern startups where continuous testing leads to incremental improvements. The role of star power is another factor in audience acquisition. Featuring a globally recognized actor like Tom Cruise adds a layer of built-in credibility and visibility. Marketing campaigns leverage this recognition, positioning the film as both a character-driven story and a star vehicle. This dual positioning increases its appeal across different audience segments, enhancing its potential reach. Release timing is also a strategic decision. By selecting a window that avoids direct competition with major blockbusters while still capturing audience attention, the film maximizes its chances of sustained performance. This is a form of market positioning where timing becomes as important as content in determining success. The concept of CPM, cost per thousand impressions, becomes relevant when evaluating the efficiency of marketing spend. By targeting audiences that are more likely to engage with the film's themes, the studio can achieve higher conversion rates at lower costs. This is particularly important for mid-budget films where marketing budgets must be carefully managed to ensure overall profitability. Influencer and media partnerships to further amplify the film's reach. Reviews, interviews, and behind-the-scenes content create additional with potential viewers. These touchpoints serve to build trust and generate interest, often reaching audiences that traditional advertising might miss. The film's marketing also benefits from its basis in real events. This adds a layer of authenticity that can be leveraged in promotional materials. Phrases like "based on a true story" function as powerful hooks. Audiences who are interested in narratives grounded in reality. These positioning aligns well with higher advertiser categories such as education and finance. Analytics continue to play a role even after the film's release. Box office performance, audience demographics, and viewing patterns are analyzed to inform ongoing distributional strategies. This data can influence decisions related to international releases, streaming availability, and promotional campaigns, ensuring that the film continues to generate revenue over time. The integration of global markets is another important consideration. By tailoring marketing strategies to different regions, the film can optimize its performance across diverse audiences. This localization involves adjustments in language, cultural references, and promotional channels, ensuring that the film resonates within each market. From a broader perspective, the marketing strategy reflects a shift toward performance-driven campaigns, where success is measured not just by reach, but by conversion and retention. This aligns with the film's overall theme of efficiency and optimization, reinforcing its identity as both a narrative and a business product. Ultimately, this step reveals that the journey of a film does not end with its completion. It continues through its interaction with audiences. Marketing and analytics serve as the bridge between creation and consumption, transforming a finished product into a living entity that evolves based on audience response. Through careful planning, data analysis, and strategic execution, American-made extends its impact beyond the screen, becoming part of a larger ecosystem of media, e-commerce, and culture. As the film reaches its phase of critical reception and long-term valuation, we begin to see how American-made transitions from a product in circulation to an asset in the cultural and economic marketplace. This stage is less about immediate performance and more about how the film is interpreted, remembered, and monetized over time. It is here that a critical perception, audience response, and industry recognition converge to determine the film's enduring value. Critically, the film received a generally favorable response, with the reviewers highlighting its energetic pacing, engaging tone, and the performance of its lead actor. However, beyond surface-level praise, what stands out is how the film was positioned within a broader category of intelligent entertainment. Critics often noted its ability to balance humor with serious subject matter, creating a narrative that is both accessible and thought-provoking. This dual appeal is a key factor in its sustained relevance. From an awards perspective, the film did not dominate major ceremonies, but these does not diminish its value. Awards are one form of validation, but not the only one. In many cases, films that achieve a moderate critical success and strong audience engagement can generate more consistent long-term revenue than those that rely solely on awards recognition. This introduces the concept of fast steady-state value, where a film continues to perform reliably over time rather than experiencing short-lived peaks. Audience reception plays an equally important role. Viewers responded positively to the film's tone and storytelling approach, appreciating its blend of real-world context and a cinematic flair. This positive reception contributes to word-of-mouth distribution, a powerful mechanism that can extend a film's lifespan far beyond its initial release window. In economic terms, this is a form of organic growth driven by user-generated promotion. The film's performance in secondary markets further reinforces its long-term value. Streaming platforms, digital rentals, and television syndication provide additional revenue streams that often operate on higher margins than theatrical releases. These platforms also introduce the film to new audiences, ensuring that it remains relevant in an evolving media landscape. This is where the concept of lifetime value becomes particularly significant. Brand perception is another critical factor. American-made contributes to the broader brand of its studio and its lead actor, reinforcing their association with high-quality, engaging content. These brand equity has tangible financial implications, influencing future projects and audience expectations. A strong brand can reduce marketing costs and increase conversion rates for subsequent releases. The film also benefits from its educational and analytical appeal. Its themes of finance, technology, and psychology align with high RPM advertiser categories, making it attractive for platforms and channels that focus on in-depth analysis. This alignment enhances its monetization potential in digital environments where content is often repurposed and reinterpreted. Cultural impact, while more difficult to quantify, is another dimension of value. The film contributes to ongoing conversations about systems, ethics, and at the intersection of individual ambition with institutional power. Even if it does not dominate headlines, it becomes a part of a larger discourse influencing how audiences think about these topics. The concept of rewatch value is also films that offer multiple layers of meaning encourage repeat viewings, increasing both engagement and revenue. American-made achieves this through its combination of narrative intrigue and analytical depth, allowing viewers to discover new insights with each viewing. From an investment perspective, the film can be seen as a successful portfolio component. It may not be the highest grossing entry, but it contributes stability and diversity to the studio's lineup. In portfolio management, such assets are essential for balancing risk and ensuring consistent returns. The role of international markets cannot be overlooked. By performing across different regions, the film diversifies its revenue base and reduces dependency on any single market. This global reach enhances its resilience and long-term profitability. As time passes, the film's value continues to evolve. New technologies, changing audience preferences, and emerging platforms all influence how it is consumed and monetized. This dynamic nature of value underscores the importance of adaptability in the entertainment industry. Ultimately, This step reveals that a film's journey does not end with its release or even its initial reception. It continues to generate value through a combination of critical interpretation, audience engagement, and a strategic distribution. American media stands as an example of how a well-executed project can achieve not just immediate success, but sustained relevance, a testament to the enduring relationship between art, commerce, and a cultural impact. As the film reaches a phase of critical reception and a long-term valuation, we begin to see how American-made transitions from a product in circulation to an asset in the cultural and economic marketplace. This stage is less about immediate performance and more about how the film is interpreted, remembered, and monetized over time. It is here that a critical perception, audience response, and industry recognition converge to determine the film's enduring value. Critically, the film received a generally favorable response, with the reviewers highlighting its energetic pacing, engaging tone, and the performance of its lead actor. However, beyond surface-level praise, what stands out is how the film was positioned within a broader category of intelligent entertainment. Critics often noted its ability to balance humor with serious subject matter, creating a narrative that is both accessible and thought-provoking. This dual appeal is a key factor in its sustained relevance. From an awards perspective, the film did not dominate major ceremonies, but it does not diminish its value. Awards are one form of validation, but not the only one. In many cases, films that achieve a moderate critical success and strong audience engagement can generate more consistent long-term revenue than those that rely solely on awards recognition. This introduces the concept of fast estate value, where a film continues to perform reliably over time rather than experiencing short-lived peaks. Audience reception plays an equally important role. Viewers respond positively to the film's tone and storytelling approach, appreciating its blend of real-world context and cinematic flair. This positive reception contributes to word-of-mouth distribution, a powerful mechanism that can extend a film's lifespan far beyond its initial release window. In economic terms, this is a form of organic growth driven by user-generated promotion. The film's performance in secondary markets further reinforces its long-term value. Streaming platforms, digital rentals, and television syndication provide additional revenue streams that often operate on higher margins than theatrical releases. These platforms also introduce the film to new audiences, ensuring that it remains relevant in an evolving media landscape. This is where the concept of lifetime value becomes particularly significant. Brand perception is another critical factor. American-made contributes to the broader brand of its studio and its lead actor, reinforcing their association with high-quality, engaging content. These brand equity has tangible financial implications, influencing future projects and audience expectations. A strong brand can reduce marketing costs and increase conversion rates for subsequent releases. The film also benefits from its educational and analytical appeal. Its themes of finance, technology, and psychology align with high RPM advertiser categories, making it attractive for platforms and channels that focus on in-depth analysis. This alignment enhances its monetization potential in digital environments where content is often repurposed and reinterpreted. Cultural impact, while more difficult to quantify, is another dimension of value. The film contributes to ongoing conversations about systems, ethics, and at the intersection of individual ambition with institutional power. Even if it does not dominate headlines, it becomes a part of a larger discourse, influencing how audiences think about these topics. The concept of rewatch value is also critical. Films that offer multiple layers of meaning encourage repeated viewings, increasing both engagement and revenue. American-made achieves these through its combination of narrative intrigue and analytical depth, allowing viewers to discover new insights with each viewing. From an investment perspective, the film can be seen as a successful portfolio component. It might not be the highest grossing entry, but it contributes stability and diversity to the studio's lineup. In portfolio management, such assets are essential for balancing risk and ensuring consistent returns. The role of international markets cannot be overlooked. By performing across different regions, The film diversifies its revenue base and reduces dependency on any single market. This global reach enhances its resilience and long-term profitability. As time passes, the film's value continues to evolve. New technologies, changing audience preferences, and emerging platforms all influence how it is consumed and monetized. This dynamic nature of value underscores the importance of adaptability in the entertainment industry. Ultimately, this step reveals that a film's journey does not end with its release or even its initial reception. It continues to generate value through a combination of critical interpretation, audience engagement, and a strategic distribution. American media stands as an example of how a well-executed project can achieve not just immediate success but sustained relevance, a testament to the enduring relationship between art, commerce, and a cultural impact. As we arrive at the final phase of this deep dive, the film begins to reveal its most important lesson, not through action, not through a dialogue, but through the quiet alignment of art, technology, and a capital. What initially appears as a fast-moving story about aviation and a risk gradually transforms into a study of systems, how they are built, how they scale, and how they eventually reach their limits. At its core, American media is a reflection on the nature of opportunity. It shows us that opportunity rarely arrives in a perfect, well-defined form. Instead, it emerges in fragmented pieces, a skill that is underutilized, a system that is inefficient, a gap that can be exploited. The protagonist's journey is not about discovering something entirely new, but about recognizing the value of what already exists and applying it in a different context. The film also explores the relationship between speed and control. In the early stages, speed is an advantage. It allows for rapid execution, quick adaptation, and accelerated growth. But as the system expands, speed begins to outpace control. Decisions are made faster than they can be evaluated, and processes evolve faster than they can be stabilized. This imbalance becomes the essential tension of the narrative, a reminder that growth without structure can lead to instability. Technology plays a subtle but critical role in this dynamic. The aircraft, the communication systems, the logistical networks, all of these elements enable the operation to function at scale. But technology alone is not enough. It must be paired with effective management, clear strategy, and an understanding of risk. The film demonstrates that technology is a tool, not a solution. Its impact depends entirely on how it is used. From a financial perspective, the story is a case study and risk-reward calculation. Every decision involves a trade-off between potential gain and potential loss. The protagonist consistently chooses to prioritize reward driven by both ambition and the reinforcing effects of early success. This creates a trajectory where short-term gains accumulate rapidly, but long-term risks remain unresolved. Psychologically, the film highlights the power of adaptation.